this particular problem focuses on consolidating loans and how we handle sort of looking at it and then thinking about whether or not that consolidation actually saves us money. So we have Emmett here, and he has 3 different credit card loans. One on Discover, one on Visa, and one on American Express, and each have different interest rates and each have a different minimum payment. First thing we want to know is how many payments with making the minimum payment would we need to do in order to pay off each credit card. Now, that means I'm basically looking for N in each of these situations, so I'm going to just fill in the question mark on N. Then the other thing I want to do is I want to label which one's which. So this first one's going to be Discover, the second one's going to be our Visa, and the third one is going to be American Express. So if I look at the Discover card, I want to know how long it will take given a 16% interest, so there's my I value. And the present value should be the loan amount. Remember, PV is the loan amount. PMT is our monthly payment. And then future value, when it comes to loans, we want our future value to be 0 because that means we'd owe no money. And with our loans, we're going to just treat them as if they're compounding monthly because we're making monthly payments. All right, so we have 0 for our future value. Our payment on this first card was $60 a month. Now, I like to make my payment value negative because that $60 is coming out of my pocket. Or another way to think about it is it's taking away from my loan value of $2,176. The key thing when you're thinking about this is the fact that no matter what I do, either the PV or the payment needs to be negative and the other one needs to be positive. They're opposite from each other. So in my case, I like to say, okay, well, I have a balance of $176. I owe that much. And I'm going to take away from that $60 each payment amount until I reach 0. And I have 12 payments per year, and I want to solve for N. So I click on solve for N, and I get 49. I'm going to change color. Or no, I'll keep it purple. 49.89 payments. And yes, I keep that decimal there because the last payment's going to be a little less than the full amount. But don't think, I don't want to round that up to 50 because then I'm paying extra. And I don't want to round it down to 49 because, well, the bank won't either. All right, so then if I move on to my Visa, the Visa one has an 18% interest rate. And I only owe Emmett only owes $650 on that one. But because it's a little less, the minimum payment's $35, and then that future value and payments per period stays the same. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to delete out and I'm going to change that to 18. The amount we owe now is $650. And we're going to pay $35 per payment period, and we're going to solve for N. And so we get 21.93 payments. And then last but not least, we look at our American Express. That has the highest interest rate at 19%, and Emmett owes $1,546 with the payment each month of $40. And we want to know when that's going to get to 0. And so again, we're just sort of going through the same process for each of our loans. So we need to gather this information because it's going to allow us to sort of figure out how much total money we pay and how long it takes. So this time it's 60.26 payments, so a little over 5 years. And so now that I have this payment amount, I can figure out the total interest and the percent interest for each of these loans. So let's start with this American Express one because we just did it. And I'm going to flip over to just a normal calculator. So step 1, I need to know the total amount I paid. Well, the total amount you paid is going to be found by taking your number of payments and timesing it by the amount you paid each month, which was $40 in this case. So 60.26, oops, it helps if the decimal comes in there, 0.26 times 40. And I get that we made a total amount of payments of $2,410.40. Now, that's the total you paid. if I want to know how much you paid in interest, you would take your total and you're going to subtract what the loan was for. So we're going to minus our loan amount from that, so $1,546. And from there, I get my interest, which in this case was $864.40. So there's the interest on one of my credit cards. And we were asked to find the percent interest. To do percent interest, I would take that value, the 864.4, and I would divide it by the total amount of money that we paid. Oops, doesn't want to hit the decimal. And then I would, of course, to turn it into a percent, times it by 100. And so I get 35.9% interest. Remember, we said that's pretty typical. We end up with sort of interest that's in the 30s. And so, okay, so we basically are going to repeat this process for each of our loans. And we do need to find the interest for each of these loans, because if we look at the next question, we're asked if transferring the funds is worth it. And so I do need to know sort of how much I pay in fees. So I'm going to sort of save a little bit of time because, the process would be the same for all of these. So on the Visa card, though, you should have come up with interest of $117.55, and that was only 15.3%. So that was a small amount of interest. And then on the original card, the Discover one, it was $817.40 of interest, and that was 27.3% interest. All right, so now let's take a second and look at this new situation. So we want to consolidate a loan. So a consolidate a loan basically means instead of paying 3 separate groups, we're going to just put all the money under one credit card. And so you get a great deal. There's an introductory rate if you get the Chase Freedom card, which offers a 0% rate for the first 15 months. But after those first 15 months, your rate's going to go up to 27.49. Now, most cards, in order to transfer budget, is either going to charge you 3% or $5, whichever one is larger. And we're going to just carry over the same monthly payment. So we need to do a little bit of work. So first thing, if we go over here, let's just total up our monthly payment, because that's not going to change. And so let's get a new line. So we paid $60 for one card, we paid $35 on the middle card, and we paid $40 on the final card. And so there was a total payments of $135. So that means on the new card, we're going to keep paying $135 a month. So we're not going to save anything by getting a smaller payment. We're going to just pay the same amount. We still want to get it down to 0. Now, the part that's going to change a little is that loan amount. So the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out the total sort of amount we're getting a loan for. Now, we're going to be transferring all 3 of these. So I can sort of total them. So the total owed would be, $2,176 plus $650 plus $1,546. And so if I total those numbers, I'm going to do this in parentheses. 2,176 plus 650 plus 1,546. I get a total of 4,372. Nope, I type $2. That's how much I owed originally, but we're going to be adding in a transfer fee, and the transfer fee is going to be 3%, because 3% of 4,000 is going to be more than $5. So we need to figure out the transfer fee. And so I'm going to take 3% of this total loan amount. So that would be the 4,372 times 0.03, because that's 3%, which is part of why I didn't. So we had to pay $131.16 in transfer fees. So our actual PV is going to be these two numbers added together. That's going to be how much we borrow. So we're going to add back in the $4,372, and so we are actually going to borrow $4,503.16. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky, because originally we have a 0% APR. So there's two different ways you can look at it. One way is I can use my TVM solver and I can say, okay, the interest rate is 0 and we're going to be paying that for 15 months. And what I actually then will be finding is, what is my future value given that we paid this amount for 15 months? And so I can go over and I'm going to clear out my TVM solver, and I have 15 months at an interest rate of 0, and my present value is $403.16, and my payment is negative $135. Oops, I deleted it. And then it's 12. And I solve for my future value. And what this number tells me, that 2,478.16, well, that's actually how much money I'm still gonna owe after those 15 payments. Now, that's one option, and it totally works to use the TVM solver here. Another way to think about it is you don't owe any interest, so your loan isn't growing, but you are taking out $135 each month, which means I could also figure it out by going the first 15 months and saying, well, I'm starting with $4,503.16, but I'm taking away $135 15 times. And if you do this calculation, you're going to get the same exact answer you got in the TVM solver, of that at the end of 15 months, you still owe $2,478.16. But it's just another way to sort of get to the same value that I started with. This now is the actual amount, the sort of new loan amount. And so this now is going to become my new present value. So let me change to green here. So it's sort of like you're going to get like a second row. Now I need to figure out how many more payments I'm going to need to make. My interest rate has gone up to 27.49%. We're going to borrow this amount of money. So this now comes in here. This was, what we got in our future value, the 2,478.16. The 35 stays the same. And the future value now is 0, and we still want 12 payments per year. So I'm going to go here. We're going to sort of clear that out. That's what we're looking for. We now have 27.49. Our present value becomes what was the future value in this other calculation. Our future value now goes down to 0 because we want to clear out our debt, and we want to know how long it will take. And so it shows us that it's going to take an additional 24.09 payments. Well, if I want to then, I need to basically compare interest amounts. So in this particular case, if I want to figure out my interest, I didn't pay any interest initially. I only paid interest on those 24 payments. So I can say, I borrowed for those 24 payments. Oops. And then, no, clear. Nope, I'm highlighting, not erasing. So of $135, and we want to take out the amount we borrowed that time, so the 2,478.16, and we would find out that we paid only $716.84 in interest. Well, I still haven't answered the question, because the question, and let's go sort of back here, is it worth it for him to transfer all the balances? Okay, well, this is the interest when I transfer balances. It's down to $716. If I go and I look in the, look at the original problem, remember we had 3 separate interest amounts. And so if we add those together, $800.40 from the Discover card plus $117.55, plus the $864.40, and you'll see that we paid a total in interest of $1,799.30. Oops, I lost a decimal. 35 cents in interest. So up here, our total interest was $1,799.35. So that's almost $1,000 more in interest. But you might be going, wait, but we also had this fee here. But even if I add in the $131 fee, I'm still going to be spending less money over here in the consolidated loan than I did in the 3 separate loans. So I would argue that he should most definitely transfer his balances. Not only is he going to pay less money, he's going to pay off his loans quicker, and he's going to pay less money in the long run. Because notice, his total amount of payments is fewer than both the Discover and the American Express. So it's definitely the way to go. And he should take advantage of that consolidation offer. So hopefully this sort of explains the work that you saw on this problem, and you might have a better sense of how to handle consolidating loans.